joining the run home with Joel and Fletch with Barney in the chair. We say hello to Matthew Hayden. Hey, Dos, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. How's it going?
Mate, we're going pretty good to be speaking to a bloke who played 103 tests, close to 9,000 runs, 30 tonnes to be in that green cap or that green helmet and to get 30 tonnes, 29 50s. You must be fired up this time of year.
Yeah, summer. How good. I mean, we had, I think, arguably one of the greatest grand finals of all time that's just, sets the sun set on that. But now we're into cricket season and we got, this test match is going to have some, really special connotations around it. Davey Warner, obviously, the way that he went through the World Cup and, back on shores, you've got Travis Head, that's 96 away from 3,000 runs, men's, test cricket. Smudgy, talk about my 100. Smudgy's got 32. He's just one away from, getting to the second highest above Stephen Waugh and Ricky Ponting, obviously the highest. You got Lyon that's sitting on not 496 wickets. So 4 wickets away from his 500. And there's been 2 kings, one of which you just mentioned there, Warne and McGrath, that's, done that, and he joins that in a really elusive club. And then from the Pakistan side as well, you've got Babar Azam, who's just recently relinquished his rights as the captain. Shane Masood has just, come into that particular position, fresh off a really good 100, in fact 200 against the Prime Minister's 11. And you've always got the dark horse of Pakistan. I mean, they just roll out great fast bowlers. You could pick 20 fast bowlers from Pakistan, and each one of them would give us a little tingle, when it comes to this Perth wicket. So, boys, plenty to look forward to.
Mate, it has been such a big year for Australia in the cricket. And I think this, so much to look forward to as well. But with this side, this current side, Pat Cummins, man, obviously they've got they've just won the World Cup. They've got the T20 World Cup. They've got the World Test Championship, and they've retained the Ashes. In terms of we always talk about generations of Australian cricket. You were part of an amazing generation, a golden generation, if you will. How do you guys see this generation now as stacking up in terms of great teams of the past?
Well, there's no doubt it's a great team. That World Cup, if you just want to hit the pause button there for a second to see firsthand how the group really galvanised behind Pat Cummins and Andrew McDonald at senior management level to win that World Cup. I mean, literally, it's kind of, from an Indian perspective, it was kind of like the Titanic.
Yeah.
It was the ship that was never going to sink, right? Like, you just had 10 unbeatable games in a row for Team India. And there was just this great optimism and throw the weight of, 1.3, 1.4 billion people behind it. And it was just something that was never going to go down. Team India was called right from the get-go as being the best side. And yet here this team is, under the leadership of Pat Cummins, to another title, the 6th international title and World Cup title for Team Australia. And some of the, remarkable performances that sat in that, including Pat's as well in the back half of the tournament, not only as a leader but also the bowler. And then you had Joshy Hazelwood that was sitting there, always the ever, a bit like McGrath used to have in his role. Mitchell Stark. It didn't really matter who you, and this is where my point gets, it didn't really matter who you pick in that side, even Marnus Labuschagne, and of course Travis Head. They all won matches in some way. Either, and one of the great hallmarks from all those, iconic test playing nations that you talk about is that they have incredible defensive fielding efforts, and Davey Warner really led the charge there with Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne. So just, I think it's comparable. You win a World Cup away from home, especially in India, that's huge. The T20 World Cup, we also saw how great a series that was. The Ashes and the Test match, I guess, is the only question mark. I mean, you get 2-0 up in a series and then you end up drawing the series. Yes, we retain the Ashes, but I think, this side is probably wanting to achieve more than that. We've always, I think, as a playing nation, been great at once the jugulars revealed, just going in hard for the kill. And it didn't quite happen through our winter. But having said that, look, this side is just something else.
It'll be something else shortly. No David Warner, whenever that may be, but it'll be soon enough. Usman Khawaja, his career at some stage, Haydos, will be done and dusted. It'll be a terrific career as well. So you sitting back observing now as the fan, I suppose, and working with Channel 7, who do you see, in the next 3-4 years, if it's you having the selection to be the 1 and 2 of Australia?
Yeah, well, look, the first thing is that you have to go, and this has been an age-old strategy from a selection point of view, is that who's the individual's best performing in Shield cricket. And Cameron Bancroft, for mine, he will walk into that scenario straight away. He's him and the actual Perth unit itself has been phenomenal. So then you've got someone like Matt Renshaw, who, again, fresh off 100. He's been waiting in the wings. When you think of Usman Khawaja, he's only played 66 Test matches, fellas. Like, the average is 47.
Wow.
He's got 15 tons and 5,000 runs. Like, he should have, in my book, been Davey Warner's equal. 109 games, 8,500 runs, averaging 40. But it wasn't his time. So my point is, you've got to have a bit of luck as well. Like, it's got to be your time. But, there's two names straight away that I think have been in and around the fringes of the Australian cricket team for a fairly long period of time, putting runs on the board, in particular Bancroft. But for fans out there, I wouldn't be too worried or concerned about, having replacements for some of these players because, the investment in the grassroots of our game is second to none. That's why a nation of 25, 26 million people can beat 1.3 billion people, because the focus and the investment in the grassroots at club level, state level in the Shield program, now the Big Bash League, which is, screening all through the summer. It's there and it produces world-class cricketers and world-class athletes even before they're world-class cricketers. So don't worry.
Mate, now just on the retirement of Dave Warner and the conversation around who goes into that next spot, you obviously had a great partnership at the top of the order with your old mate, Justin Langer. How important is it that opening pairs have good chemistry and understand each other's games? Because obviously that might be something you're looking for.
Yeah, very important. It's one of the unique roles within any kind of team is those combinations. You could argue that, right at the top of the bowling order as well, the two men that walk out with the baggy green and take the new ball, that's a really important combination. I'd always sort of bracket it 1, 2, and 3. I think that's kind of like what they call in the Australian cricket team culture, the engine room. That was started with David Boone and Jeff Marsh, Mark Taylor, recently inducted into the SCG Hall of Fame. It's really important that they individually got these great skill sets, but then as you've seen by the Warner and Khawaja partnership, it's been phenomenal. And so, you build this. I think most of the time you look down the side and you go individually, okay, well, here we go. We're going to look at Steve Smith. We're going to look at Smudgy's performances. But when you look at him, you look at his line item in his own performance. When you come to 1, 2, and 3, in our day it was JL, myself, and Ricky Ponting, you didn't really separate those three. It was kind of just, you want that in a block. You've almost vote in a block, if that makes sense. That's how important it is, to the culture of the group. It's no different to the front rowers in rugby league or rugby union. They don't often score tries, but gee, they do. Come state of origin time, they do the heavy lifting, and they get recognised for that, albeit in a much more low key way than a winger, for example, who scores a truckload.
I tell you what, front row has been that 1, 2, 3. Hayden, Langer, and Ponting. That's Payne, Haas, Fisher, Harrison, Leota, isn't it?
That's a pretty good front row right there.
My oath it is. Hey, just looking at the all-time list, and I know,
thankfully one of them plays for the Broncos.
Haydos, where were you for that match?
Mate, I was in Singapore with Steph Rice. Now, it was just by coincidence that we were flying we were flying to Singapore. She was going to Dubai. I was going to India for the World Cup. But we watched it together, And it was a unique scenario because we're actually in the lounge together, but downstairs there was a pub, and there was obviously 120 Australians there, of which I reckon 90% of them were Broncos. So every time they cheered, I'd be like going up in the lounge, going, "Oh, you're guilty!" Just to realise that we got absolutely flogged in the back. 20 minutes. It was the most demoralising bloody performance I've ever been a part of in terms of a sporting event. Unbelievable.
Tell you what, though, like it's not just one of the best grand finals I've ever seen, and the poor Broncos have been in two of the greatest grand finals of all time. But it was one of the greatest games I've ever seen, Haydos. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Yeah.
Like I'd rival that with the World Cup final that we've just seen with the cricket.
Yeah.
I mean, it was and the AFL grand final. Like, surely the three grand finals that we've been presented as Australian sports fans, I'm not sure you can get any better than that.
No.
I mean, Cleary running over the top of Broncos, I say that just with respect to being a Broncos fan, but that was one of the more extraordinary sporting performances on the planet, right? And then when you think about Travis Head, running back over his shoulder, taking an absolute specky to dismiss Rohit Sharma. What a great catch, match-winning catch.
Yep.
And then to go on what he did as well, in the final, that's a pretty extraordinary, effort, plus the Test World Championship effort. That was extraordinary. So we're really being treated as some great grand final cricket and footy. And it's not always the case, right? Like, oftentimes you see, one side heavily, capitulate, but not this year. It's been amazing.
Hey, Haydos, I'd love your thoughts here and whether you're prepared to share them or not. And I know you played with Mitchell Johnson, didn't play or just missed Davey Warner, but what have you made of that fallout between the pair?
Look, I think it probably goes back a long way, but, I think a lot's been, really, it's just been like milking a headline ahead of the Test match, and it's just been, Mitch has had his opinion, and I think what's come out of it actually is some really good stuff, meaning that it reinforces what I believe within the culture of cricket, that there is no such thing as a guarantee.
Yep.
There just isn't. And when you look at Davey's performances over the last 2 years, he knows that he can be better, and he's going to have to be better in these next, couple of matches so that he ensures that he gets, what he's put out there. And I think that's right. I mean, I'm never going to criticise anyone for putting stuff out there. I mean, in my first game, I asked just by curiosity, the press, has anyone made, 200 on debut?
Yeah.
I mean, in hindsight, that was a ridiculous comment, right? But in my head, I was that confident that I was going to do something special because, boys, I'd waited 5 years. Now, in my opinion, Davey Warner's one of the 14 players that's part of the Centurion Club of Australian cricket. And if he wants to play for however long he wants to play, then provided that he's performing, and George Bailey said exactly this, there's no guarantees, but he's in our best team.
Yep.
I mean, that's full stop. And then the rest of us can speculate, and we can go to school on the numbers, which is in the last 2 years, he's averaging 21 or 22, and he's made 100, and that was, back in 22. So no one's got a license. And this is the great part about Australian cricket as well. Like, when I look back at even my own one-day game, Mark Waugh had to step aside for me to open with Adam Gilchrist. Now, was he not capable of carrying on? Hell no. He was one of our greats. But the Australian cricket culture has allowed whoever's going to replace David, whenever he wants to go, give him enough opportunity then, to build a substantial legacy within the game. And that's how we've created this, incredible, legacy amongst, the global cricket community, because everyone looks in and goes, well, what's our magic dust? Well, our magic dust is this: David Warner. He fielded his arse off in the semi-final, basically in Kolkata alone stopped 30 runs inside the first 10 overs. And in finals where margins are, sometimes very small, that was extraordinary. Come to the Test match game, you look at his performances over the last 2 years, and you can't just look at the hundreds, right? Because you've got to look at, well, what's the mean score, and how many times did he get above 50? And in those performances, how many times did he win games of cricket? And in my opinion, he wins plenty because he has got this great presence. and he deserves to, be there right now.
Speaking of legacy, the late Shane Warne, great mate of yourself. I understand on Boxing Day tests, there's encouragement for the fans to turn up in a floppy-brimmed hat just to get around the great man.
Yeah.
But we're talking about this the other day, Haydos, and you may have a better answer than what we have, but when Warney was at his absolute peak, it was such alluring to watch what he was coming up with, and every kid down the park, as you would see when Benji Marshall was coming through the step, you'd see everyone trying to do the leg spin. But we never really saw. You thought that because of the population of kids wanting to be leg spinners, you'd see this Shane Warne after Shane Warne in the decades to come, but we haven't, which highlights how bloody good he was. But we just haven't seen that, have we?
Mm. Yeah, it's a very interesting observation, and look, I don't have a great answer to it other than to just add one part, to your comment, and that is yet. Dot. We haven't seen it yet. Like we've got some pretty extraordinary younger talents that are coming through the ranks that have got leg spin on their mind, and I think part of it is also the format as well, being majority of the younger players getting lured into the reduced formats of the game, but unlike maybe, Park Warney as a role model aside, you've got so many, like Kuldeep Yadav, for example, in India, has got this great following and he's having great success within the shorter formats of the game. And I think these kids are sort of trying to work out, well, what do I really want? Do I want to bowl, huge leg breaks that create lots of angles, which batters tend to roost back? Guys like Clarkson and plant over the boundary about 500 metres, or do I want to just be at the stumps and be more sort of control type bowlers? More kind of switching roles with fast bowlers that traditionally, like McGrath, you just could never hit him off a length. He was always at you.
Hey,
so
Dos.
I think it's a challenging time.
So unfortunate the music's playing, which means we've got a hard out, but we can join yourself, Justin Langer, Ricky Ponting and the team live on Channel 7. It all starts tomorrow. We're looking forward to that, 12:30, each day of the test on Channel 7 and 7, mate. So appreciative of your time and how generous you've been, Haydos. We'd love to get you back again on the run home with Joel and Fletch.
Enjoy your Chrissy hams when it comes around. Good stuff.
You too, mate. All the best to your family for Christmas, and we'll catch you soon. And look forward to the coverage on Channel 7, the run home with Joel and Fletch.